Good morning, everybody. Today we're looking at 1 Peter chapter 5. It's the end of this first letter. Just a reminder that this is written about 30 years after Jesus' death and resurrection. It's at a time when Rome was ruling and persecuting Christians in a huge way. And one of the things that Peter has told us all throughout this letter is that actually we should expect persecution if we're followers of Jesus. Remember that Jesus lived a perfect life, and he was persecuted horribly. And so if we follow in the way of Jesus, we will be persecuted. And so he calls his followers, Jesus followers, to get even closer to Jesus during this time and so that we can persevere. And he calls us to focus on loving others and doing good, and even to pray for government leaders, even if you don't agree with them. And to be assured that our ultimate hope for the future is in Jesus, and that is secure. And in this last chapter, Peter first talks to leaders of the church, and he passes on to these leaders the same instructions that Jesus actually gave him, as Jesus gave him the opportunity to lead. You might call this a job description for shepherds, anyone who is in a leadership position in a church. I want to read verses 2 through 4 of chapter 5. He says this, he says, "As a fellow elder, I appeal to you. Care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but because you are eager to serve God. And don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when the good shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor." Peter reminds us and reminds church leadership that anyone leading in leadership it's a calling from God. God entrusts the flock of sheep, the congregation, to you. And serving a community is an amazing and a humbling privilege. And as we serve the community, this is how we serve God. And Peter reminds them, the leaders, anybody who's in leadership, to walk your talk, to be authentic. A leader's example is powerful, and the honor of serving and walking with people is the true reward. After talking to shepherds and about shepherds, Peter then gives a stern warning, and he talks about someone who he calls a prowling, roaring lion. And of course, he's talking about the devil. And Peter is convinced, as am I, that the devil is very real. We look at verses 8 and 9. He says this, he says, "Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your Christian brothers and sisters all over the world are going through the same kind of suffering you are." I like what Pastor Chuck Swindoll writes about the devil. He says this, he says, "We must realize that every fiber of his being is bent on defaming and defeating us. And our response should be to keep on the lookout for the predator. And we should expect our resistance to Satan to be both painful and rewarding." Jesus' brother James, in James chapter 4, writes something very similar. He says, "So humble yourselves before God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Peter finishes with a powerful promise, and it's really a promise that all of us need to have in mind every single day, that even though most of us have not had to suffer physically, Peter wants us to remember that suffering for Jesus is something that's very common all over the world. It was true then, and it was true now. And so we look at verse 10, and it says this, "In his kindness, God called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, support, and strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation. All power to him forever and ever. Amen. May the Lord continue to strengthen you and in your journey and in your call to let your light shine. Have an amazing day.
If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.